The British government is denying claims that it has been invited to send special forces here into the Republic of Ghana after it was forced to withdraw all of its 300 peacekeepers from Mali in the face of bands of Russian mercenaries and jihadist groups. Now, reports by the UK media outlet Telegraph reported that the British ministers who are visiting Accra this week will be here in the country to hammer out a new security arrangement with not just Ghana but its neighbouring countries. Earlier today, President Akufo-Addo at a counter-terrorism meeting dubbed the Accra Initiative called for a joint effort to tackle the problem of an upsurge in violent extremism in West Africa.
I think some great progress has been made this week. Yesterday in the ministers' meeting, there was a real effort to really think through what the Accra Initiative could be, both as a political construct and as a security organisation. And today in the Heads of Government meeting, we've heard some really good contributions that show that there is real determination here in West Africa for a West African solution to a West African problem.
And you were centered on the U approach. Is it the case that terrorism is not a UK problem, or you are standing aloof just watching African countries deal with their own problems?
No, I mean, and in fact, my remarks specifically said the opposite. What I said is that, we must show solidarity with the African nations that are on the front line in this fight against terrorism. There is no doubt at all that you cannot be left to face this fight on your own, not least because the UK interests and the interests of our European and North American allies are being challenged by the insecurity that is here in West Africa. But what I also reflected is that 25 years of Iraq and Afghanistan have shown us that when we turn up and try to do the fight ourselves, we often end up making things worse, not better. And so what I'm saying is that we must show solidarity in supporting you, but we passionately believe, as you believe, that this must be your solution to your problem.
So in what ways, practically, is the UK government willing to support the Accra Initiative?
Well, at the very early stages as we are now, the offer is how do we help with the development of the Accra Initiative as an idea? How do our military planners help with the campaign design? As you've heard today, there is a very high-level political intent from the heads of government to do this. Now what needs to be done is to work out exactly what it looks like, and we've offered our help in that, and if that offer is accepted, then we'll be here. And that is the really important point here. I don't have a plan that says, I'm going to do this year, I'm going to do this next year, I'm going to do this the year after, because that's not my plan to have. As you work out what the challenge is and how you want to design a military campaign to deliver security within the Accra Initiative countries, that will naturally throw out of it requirements around intelligence, logistics, training of your forces, equipment requirements. And that's when we, as your friends in Europe, can gather together a group of countries who think that we need to support this and see how we can help. And the EU have been here today, the UK, Germany, France, Norway, Spain. There's lots of countries who have come because they want to help, but they need to know from you what that help looks like.
And earlier this morning, we're discussing details of a story by Telegraph indicating that the UK government is intending to move some troops, I don't know, to Ghana. What do you have to say?
Yeah, no, so I think that the UK newspaper that reported that, I think they've just slightly misunderstood whatever they were briefed. The reality is that there are already UK troops here in Ghana training your armed forces. There have been for a number of years. The relationship between the UK and Ghanaian armed forces is already incredibly close. That's that. I mean, there are no current plans to send anybody else here because it depends on what the Accra Initiative asks for. And I can be very clear that I am sure that what the Accra Initiative will ask for is support in the enablement of the mission, so logistics, intelligence, training, equipment. I don't think for 1 second that they are going to ask us to send fighting troops to Ghana.
That's not the sense. Sorry, that's not the
it's
sense.
Not going to happen. No, because they have learned all the same lessons from Iraq and Afghanistan as we've learned. if American and British and French troops were to come to Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, Togo, Benin, we won't make things better. That doesn't help. And that's why your president is entirely right to make that point. This needs to be a West African solution to a West African problem that your friends in the West help you to deliver. And we help through training, through logistics, through equipment, through intelligence support. This cannot be our fight. We will not make this better. We need to work with you so it can be your fight and that you succeed.
Mr. Minister, if we find troops here, it should be people who are already stationed here helping to train our armed forces.
Well, no, let's be clear, because I think that is important. There are already people here working with the Ghanaian armed forces. There have been for a number of years. Sorry? I'm sure we can get that number for you, but very small numbers. I suspect it's fewer than 20 at any one time, would be my estimate. What comes next as part of the Accra Initiative is entirely down to the Accra Initiative countries to work out. Now, we will help with that campaign design, and if they make an ask of us so that we can help to bring this brilliant idea to life, we will support it. But 2 years ago, we did a review of our foreign policy and our security policy, and we recognized that over the course of the 25 years in Iraq and Afghanistan, we hadn't been successful in trying to do the fight ourselves. All the governments in your region know that. They've made the same judgment themselves. So what we will do is let them design a solution that is much, much more likely to succeed, and then we will support them through training and logistics and intelligence and equipment. But I'm certain that they're not going to ask us to come and be part of the fighting. They don't want it.
But let me be hypothetical. Finally, if the Accra Initiative recommends that you provide them with troops assistance, will you do that?
I think we wait and see what the Accra Initiative asks. There's no point being hypothetical. This isn't hypothetical. This is real. There is a real security challenge right now in West Africa that these countries have come together at this conference to seek to address. So let's not second guess the process. Let's let the planning happen. Let's see what's asked for. I am sure it will be around enablement rather than combat. And when those requests come, we'll do our best to meet them. My pleasure.
That's James Heapy revealing to us that the UK government does not intend to bring special forces to Ghana. I want to bring in now Mukhtar Mumuni Mukhtar, Executive Director for the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism. Mukhtar, thank you for your time here on The Pulse. Even before we start with our conversation, I want us to equally listen to President Akufo-Addo call for a joint support in fighting terrorism. Then we can get into the claims by the UK government. Well, Mukhtar, we'll try and get the president's sound for you. But of course, you've just heard the UK, Minister for Defence indicate clearly that they do not intend to send special forces into this country. Of course, that was what Telegraph reported earlier today. And I just want to bring that to your attention. He says that there's already a special force not necessarily a special force, just about 20 persons helping to train members of the Ghana Armed Forces. So this is nothing that we should be worried about, and that sending troops will not be helpful at this time. Your take on that?
Well, of course, yes. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to your listeners and viewers. What the minister has said, there's nothing wrong with what he has said in terms of the small number of troops that are here. But the presence of troops here, the concern should be what is the mission of the troops that are here already. For a very long time, we've been having a strong relationship with the British Armed Forces. There's been training from both ways, not just British military men training Ghanaian officers. We've also had situations where our military men have been engaged in training their officers here. So that kind of engagement has been going on here. What we are concerned about is the new or additional deployment of troops that we are being told have been withdrawn from Mali. And we are talking about numbers that could be in the region of 100 to 300 members, on the ground. And that should be very, very worrying for all of us. And I'm very happy when I listen to him. He seemed to be saying all the right things in terms of what we should be doing. We should be moving away from a militarized response to dealing with terrorism. And it's largely because we have seen how that approach has proved counterproductive. And he kept citing situations of Iraq and Afghanistan, which are valid. But we also have our own situation that is very clear and close to us. We have failed significantly in the Sahel in dealing with violent extremism. We have failed in many ways, and it's largely because we have over-securitized the response to terrorism, and that is why we have failed. We saw huge numbers in terms of security operations in there. We have MINUSMA that had about 15,000 men on the ground. We have Africa. We have Operation Barkhane by the French forces, which we now know they are completely withdrawing from Mali. And this was about 5,000 men on the ground. We have G5 Sahel forces on the ground, about 5,000 men. We have Operation Takuba on the ground. We have Accra Initiative, of course, which is great and which is something we have been promoting and advocating for. And we advocate for this because it moves us significantly away from the militarized response to dealing with the threat. And you hear him talk a lot about, training and interagency cooperation, intelligence gathering and sharing, which is critical to dealing with the threat that we're seeing.
What we are not certain about is that we've not exhausted the full recommendations of the Accra Initiative. And that's why I was being hypothetical at the end by asking him, what if we have the 7 member countries, at least Nigeria is also part 8 as an observer status. But if we have all these 8 African countries, ask the United Kingdom to provide special forces, quote unquote, as the Telegraph is reporting, would that be helpful? I guess that's an area he didn't want to go to, but technically speaking, how would that contribute to our fight against terrorism?
Of course, you won't get him to say yes to that, and that would be dangerous. Nobody who has been watching this thing unfold in the last 5-6 years in the Sahel would recommend that we have troops on the ground as a major response to dealing with terrorism. What we are seeing, there's significant evidence to my argument that I've made very often, that the fight against terrorism or violent extremism will not be won on the battlefield. It will be won in the mindset, in the local community, in dealing with what we call the drivers or the underpinnings of radicalization and violent extremism. And this, we're looking at the drivers in terms of the economic, profile of this region and the factors that lead individuals to engage in terrorism. These security military measures do not address those things. And so it was suicidal for anyone to suggest at any point that there should be a request for military deployment. The Accra Initiative in conception and construct does not have room for military presence in terms of, troops on the ground. If they're asking for military here, we should be clear. Is it to train officers on the ground? Is it to help engage them understanding of what intelligence sharing, information gathering is? That should be very clear. Away from that, we do not at any point need military or boots on the ground in dealing with this threat that we are looking at.
And the form of partnership that will be given by, first of all, the European Union and the UK government, as well as the Germans, has come under question as to what sort of help we need from them if indeed we are to fight this on our own. Is this not a possible case of, over control, if I could use that word, if only something like that exists in your technical books?
Well, to be fair, terrorism, it's not a localized, not a local threat. It's a very transnational, international threat. And so what happens in one part of the world affects nearly all other parts of the world. So we have to be very intentional about the way we engage other partners. So what it is that inevitably, you would need the support of your partners in terms of financing, in terms of skills and training to be able to tool you properly to deal with the threat. So definitely we would need their support. What the form of support we need is what matters. And that would have to come from our leaders in terms of our own conception of what is needed here or what we do not have, but need to be able to fight, the threat that we're dealing with.
And then going forward, the Accra Initiative itself, today we've had that last round of engagements, sealing what it is that the ministers had recommended, that the heads of state level dialogue. What would be your expectation going forward as to how we effectively tackle this issue of terrorism? And much more bringing that home, you recently issued a paper indicating that from the position of the West Africa Center for Counter-Extremism, you feel that Ghana is becoming increasingly vulnerable to the activities of extremists. So how will this be helpful to us as a country?
Well, on the issue of the engagements that are going on, I think that for quite some time now we have been very critical of the Accra Initiative, and we've been critical for many reasons. One, some of us from the human security background believe that the Accra Initiative could be a game changer to the fight against terrorism within the sub-region. And it's because of the conception and the composition of what it is meant to do in terms of getting, utilizing interagency cooperation, intelligence sharing, and using a non-military approach dealing with the threat. But for a very long time, we have seen very little in terms of the engagement within the local front, civil society engagement, popularizing what the Accra Initiative promises to do, and solicit support and goodwill from the local population to get it through. This particular summit and conference we're having, it's a great opportunity to make that happen, so that all the recommendations that have been stated in there are carried through, and ensure that we do not come back next year looking to repeat or rehearse this itemized recommendations. We need to put these words into action and ensure that we position this region, the coastal states of West Africa, much more capable of dealing with the threat. On the issue of the paper we issued a few months ago, it is true, violent extremism has moved and is continuing to move towards coastal states. And today it has actually constricted a space allowable for us to live freely. The space is increasingly being narrowed towards the Gulf of Guinea. And we need to take this very seriously and ensure that our approach to it reflects the seriousness of the threat that we're dealing with. And we need to act or start acting now.
Mukhtar Mawuni Mukhtar would have to leave it here. Thank you so much.